Thanks for coming in this afternoon. Over the last 9 years, the city of Evansville, I think, has really, truly embraced ice hockey. We have a beautiful state-of-the-art facility and a tremendous fan base. During negotiations with the Evansville Icemen over the last many weeks, it was clear that our final proposal, which was presented yesterday, which, if you include the rink naming rights, was effectively a net subsidy for the team, would not satisfy the financial request of the team ownership. While it's unfortunate that the city and the Icemen are now at an impasse, it remains the collective goal to ensure that professional hockey is played at the Ford Center next season. It's our responsibilities to the taxpayers to explore every possible option to reach that goal. Therefore, we have identified 3 options, and they have been communicated this afternoon to the Evansville Icemen. First, the city is more than willing to continue to negotiating with the Icemen. They have our most recent proposal that we presented to them late yesterday morning, and we would look forward to their response as the next step in those negotiations. Second, the city is willing to entertain a discussion about the transfer of ownership of the Icemen to a new owner that would utilize the Ford Center. And finally, we heard last night through the media that yet another deadline, this time in February, may now exist. However, the city cannot take the risk of waiting until we find an acceptable agreement. Therefore, this afternoon, I've instructed VenueWorks, the operator of the Ford Center, to begin seeking interest from other teams and additional leagues, including the ECHL, for the 2016-2017 season. I think Evansville has proven that it is a hockey town with a fair rent model, a fantastic venue, and most importantly, a diehard fan base. On behalf of the city of Evansville, I want to thank the fans, the Icemen players, the coaches and staff for their patience during this process. And now to clarify some of the more salient points related to the negotiations themselves, I've asked Randy Alsman, the president of the Redevelopment Commission, to be with us this afternoon. Randy?
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon to you all. Appreciate this opportunity to try to add a little bit of clarity. The focal point of these negotiations, both between the team and the city, and unfortunately at times through the media, seems to have been on rent. That was the major item of disagreement, the major focal point of public comment about these negotiations. So I thought I'd try to add a little bit of additional information and some clarity. Whatever the amount of the rent is, whatever number you want to put on it, it is the very same rent, governed by the very same agreement that was presented to the Icemen, signed by the Icemen back in 2010, 2011, 5 years ago. So the rent that they're being charged today is the same rent that was contemplated when they signed the agreement all those many years ago. It has not changed. The agreement has not changed. There have been no additions or deletions from the agreement that have affected the rent. The city has lived up to its part of the agreement in good faith and completely. So if there is an issue with profitability related to the rent, it should not have been a surprise. The agreement that was reached years ago actually called for fewer games, 34 instead of 36, at a lower ticket price, $12, and quite frankly, less attendance than the great fans of Evansville have turned out so far. So if there is a failing, if there is a problem with profitability, it would be hard to believe that it is due to a rent that was higher than was contemplated when the agreements were signed. So that's one thing that I hope helps settle some of the waters on rent. Is it fair, is it unfair? The next thing is the amount of rent, and there's been a very broad difference in public comment again about what the rent amount was. Was it $650,000 or was it effectively nothing? That's a huge amount of difference. And again, I don't want to get into all the details of how that's calculated in the back and forth, but I can tell you that the agreement, as it has operated from the beginning, has called for money to come from the Icemen to the city in the form of rent, and payments back to the Icemen from the city in the form of rebates. And from the first year, those two amounts have been basically the same all the way through. The rebates and the rent have been basically the same amount. If anything, the rebates were larger. So draw your own conclusions, whether it's $650,000 or whether it's zero, but I can tell you the cash ledger balances to nearly zero at the end of the day. So while that has been the major point of contention, it should not have been a surprise. It should have been something that was contemplated from the beginning as a level that was still allowing the team to make profit and running a team here. The numbers are basically higher in attendance and number of games than was contemplated at the time. And as a result, we don't believe that if there have been losses, and we've heard that the team claims to have lost $600,000 a year in running their operations. We don't know whether that's true or not. We don't have insight into their P&L. We don't, frankly, want insight into their P&L. But if they have been losing money, it's not due to rent. So I hope that helps put a little bit of additional clarity on the issue of main contention between the two parties. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Randy. Just to button things up before we take any questions, we've had a number of folks over the last several days ask us, what can we do? What can a resident of the city of Evansville do? And here's a really simple request. Support your hockey team. They have 2 games at home next week, Wednesday and Saturday, I believe, and I would be thrilled if we could pack the house for those games and for the balance of the season. The coaching staff, the administrative staff, and the players have worked their tails off to get to where they are at this point in the season, and our community owes it to them to come out and support them. So with that, Randy and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Will you be at those 2 games, Mayor?
If my schedules permit. I haven't actually looked at that far ahead, Zach, but if I can, I will be.
How much different was the proposal that you guys gave yesterday, different from the December 18th proposal?
You know, I'd prefer not to negotiate in public. It's still an active proposal. It's still, we hope, being considered by the Icemen. I will say that the city came closer to where the Icemen wanted to be than a proposal we sent in the middle of December.
Iceman officials have said that they wanted to start the negotiation process as early as January or February of last year, but it didn't come public till November. Is it true that negotiations started back then, or did they begin in November?
I believe our actual first negotiations began in the summer, although I don't know the specific date. They did not begin in November. I believe our first preliminary discussions were in the summer, but I don't know the date. It got very intense in early to mid-November, when we were instructed for the first time that there was a December 1 deadline. We had not been told of that prior to those meetings.
Does the city want this team, this specific team, or just hockey in Evansville?
We'd love for the Evansville Icemen to stay in Evansville. We'd want nothing more. But we want hockey in Evansville. If we can't keep the Icemen, as I outlined before, we've instructed Venue Works to explore other options.
Why hockey? Why not open those nights up to more concerts or other events?
We may do that too, but I mean, Evansville has proven that it's become a hockey town. There's a good foundation of fan base here that come to the games, that enjoy it. We know we draw not only from the city of Evansville, but from the region, and that's important. It's an important cultural asset, and we'd like to keep them there.
I'm going to kind of do what Brad Bird did to Ron Geary last time. I would just have to ask, where you're standing right now, does it look like this is not going to move forward with the Icemen?
I think it's difficult to say. It's difficult to say because the Icemen have not responded to our final offer. They were the ones that informed us we are at an impasse and they would not respond. Those of you who know me know I'm a glass half full kind of guy. And so as long as we can continue to talk with them, our attorneys are talking to their attorneys, I think there's always going to be a glimmer of hope. But we have to be realists. That's why we've instructed Venue Works to take the actions that we've asked them to take, and that is to pursue other options, because we are getting to a point where we're going to need to know what to do for next season.
Have you spoken to the league about possible subsidiaries from other ownership? I know that would be in the owners' meetings in February, and you have previously said that that the city's not willing to wait for those meetings to be the final deadline, but you have to move forward with your other search for a different spot potentially. But is there hope from the league that the other owners may be able to add a little subsidiary income to help?
Yeah, I don't know. That's an issue that Mr. Gary would have to take to the league and other owners. I don't think we can put a definitive date yet. We think we've waited as long as we can wait without starting to explore other options. I think if we wait until early February to start the exploration process, it puts us behind the 8 ball in terms of scheduling hockey for next year if we can't reach an agreement. So we just think we've identified the 3 options that I've outlined, and we think it's important that we begin at least exploring that 3rd option as quickly as we can.
Is there a possibility that there will be hockey next year? Should fans prepare for that?
You know, I wouldn't want to speculate on that. I mean, we've had a singular focus to this date, and that is to come up with an agreement that's financially responsible for the taxpayers and that keeps the Evansville Icemen here. As of today, we are now exploring another option. So, you know, I don't want to speculate what may or may not happen. We're working hard to make sure there's hockey in the Ford Center for 2017.
A lot of fans that we talk to are kind of thinking that this is a personal issue, whether it be on Gary's side. Is there any truth to that, or is it truly just business?
This is a business negotiation, period.
Would you like to see Icemen stay with new ownership?
We'd love for the Evansville Icemen to stay at the Ford Center. Who their owner is, you know, is irrelevant to me. You know, our responsibility is to put together a contract with an owner that's financially responsible for the city and keeps hockey here.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.